Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Monday, July 15th, 2019. On today's episode, we're going to be gathering around the virtual water cooler to talk about what we've been up to lately. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I'm joined on today's podcast by Slash Film managing editor Jacob Hall,
Hello, hello.
weekend editor Brad Oman,
Hey, that's me.
and writers Hoai-Tran
Hey everyone.
and Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
All right, guys, so it's Monday. We are finally doing a water cooler after skipping last week. So let's just dive right into it. We have a lot to do. HT, you're going to be traveling soon. You're going to be going out to San Diego for Comic-Con. You have a plane to catch, so we're going to knock this out. And let's start with you, HT. What have you been up to?
So I attended the Crawl junket this past week, and that is the film starring Kaya Scodelario and Barry Pepper and directed by Alexander Aja. That's the horror film about a killer alligator. So for the junket, they thought, why not take us out to see some real live alligators all the way in the Long Island Aquarium, which was very far. It took us about 2 hours to get out there to see some live alligators, and it was kind of worth it because we got to see them eat some live rats. They were frozen, so there wasn't any like movement or anything, but it was an interesting experience. And the aquarium there was actually quite cool. It was a little bit gimmicky, but it had a nice sort of outdoor terrace where you could see the live alligator feeding in the outdoors.
So were you doing interviews with like alligators at your feet, like around you, or was that like in a setup in a separate room or something? How did that work?
It was set up in a separate room, which was unfortunate because I thought it would have been very cool to just have alligators eating in the background while we were interviewing everyone. But no, they set us up in one of those fancy like conference rooms and everything. So it was just the junket itself was quite normal, but the field trip to the aquarium was pretty fun.
That's pretty awesome. What else have you been doing?
So I witnessed the Cage in the Park rendition of Face Off in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. So this was something we wrote up on our site on Friday, and I saw that it was in New York, it was close by, and I decided to go, and it was a blast. It basically takes John Woo's Face Off, starring Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, and sets it in ancient Roman times, but with all of the tongue-in-cheek, fourth wall breaking references to John Woo films, Nick Cage films, and all of the ridiculous dialogue that takes place in that movie. There is even a character, John Woo, like as he's a character in this play. It's played by an actor who comes in at random intervals and comments on the actions of the characters and whatever's happening in the play. And will occasionally just say, "Oh yeah, this is an actual line of dialogue in this film. We did not make it up." So it was a lot of fun. And the guy who played Nicolas Cage, I don't have the bill on me, but he had nailed down Nicolas Cage's vocal tics and mannerisms perfectly. It was pretty eerie, actually. It was a very good impression. And at one point, they even did a slow-mo fight. They had swords instead of guns, but they would make sound effects to make it sound like they were guns. And also, they said you only have one ting left in a sword. So it was pretty fun. They did a whole slow-mo fight with John Woo coming in to sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It was just the right amount of ridiculous to do a park play of Face Off. So it was a lot of fun.
That sounds totally nuts. So, Chris, I know that you were pretty excited about this when you heard about it, but it was too short notice for you to go. If they were to launch another production of this in New York, is that something you would make a trek out there to check out?
Yeah, if I heard about it in advance and I could plan accordingly, I would definitely attend. Yeah, it sounds sounds like something worth seeing at least once in your life.
Yeah, certainly. I think the biggest question mark for me going into this was, would the actors be able to pull off this sort of lunacy of the Nicolas Cage performance in that movie? And it sounds like they succeeded, HC. So I'm glad that you that trip was worth it, as well as your trip to the Long Island Aquarium. Sounds like you had a productive past few days.
I did.
All right, so for me, I also had a productive weekend. Actually, not this past weekend, but the weekend before that, I hiked Half Dome in Yosemite National Park. I mentioned this on a previous episode that my wife and I were sort of training for this big event, and This is the biggest hike that we've ever done by far. I have some stats here for this hike. So it starts at the Yosemite Valley floor, which is about 4,000 feet, and it ends on top of Half Dome, which is 8,839 feet of elevation. So that's like 4,800 feet of elevation gain, and the total distance was 18 miles. This is far and away the longest hike that we've ever done. It took 13 hours and 37 minutes to do the whole thing. So we started at 5:19 a.m. and finished just before 7 p.m. So this was definitely a full day thing. It was pretty insane. If you guys go to my Instagram, which is at Ben Pearson, you can see some photos that I posted. I actually strapped a GoPro to my head during the cables section, which is like the final 400 feet of the ascent. There are these cables that are bolted into the granite rock wall, and you have to basically pull yourself up, and there are little like wooden slats that basically serve as steps that are along the way, but it's not like you can just walk up it like a staircase. You have to really like pull yourself up this thing, and I strapped a GoPro to my head and took a video less than a quarter of the way up that thing, and it is still, like, looking back on that video, I almost have vertigo. It's just like there were moments on especially that part, which is like the most dangerous part of the entire hike, where I was thinking, this is like one of the coolest things that we've ever done, and then you would take 4 or 5 more steps up and be like, this is insane, why are we doing this, we're gonna die at any second, like if a gust of wind catches us the wrong way, we're gonna be blown off the mountain face. This is like the most terrifying thing. So I'll be posting a few more photos and stuff along the way on my Instagram accounts if you want to check out what that was like and see a little bit of a first person POV thing from that GoPro head strap thing. You can check that out there. Jacob, what have you been up to?
I've been up to jack crap, so I'm going to bring up an ongoing debate in my marriage that threatens to derail us every single time we drive by a parking lot, and I'm going to open up to you guys. I want to hear your response to this. I will not present which side of the argument I am on. I'm just going to lay out both sides, and you tell me where you fall. At Chipotle restaurants, there are signs near the front that say parking for online and mobile orders only. There are no signage for towaways, which means that this is not a legally enforceable sign. It is just a suggestion and from the management saying they want those spaces to be used for mobile and online orders. So here's the question. Should those spaces also be allowed use for people who are getting to-go orders, who have not done mobile or online, but are planning to walk in, get food, and immediately leave? Should they also be allowed to use those spots? Bear in mind, this is the argument I've been having with my wife for years. One of us is one of these sides, and one is the other. Which one of us is correct?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
I have a question. Do the people who do online and mobile ordering, is the order brought out to them?
Yes, very recently the orders are placed on a shelf by the register so they can walk in and grab it and leave.
Okay, so the orders aren't brought out to the car though.
No, not out to the car, no.
I would say if the orders were brought out to the car by employees, then those spots shouldn't be used for to-go orders. But at the same time, I'm also kind of struggling a bit because I feel like if you're getting a to-go order and it's the lunch rush and you're stuck waiting in line for a long time, you're taking up that spot for somebody who's maybe trying to get their meal quick so they can get back to work faster, which could screw somebody over depending on where they have to park. I guess, I don't know, that's kind of tough.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of context that has to go into this because, like, in LA, in the Chipotle that I go to, the parking lot has, I don't know, maybe enough room for 10 total cars, and a couple of those are handicap spaces, and so you have to find street parking somewhere. But if this is like a sprawling parking lot where there's a lot of parking availabilities, that would sort of factor in. So what's the situation like on that front, Jacob?
The situation is that it's a parking lot of maybe about 30 spaces, but it's next to a very popular bar or restaurant, so it's always an ordeal.
H2, Chris, what do you guys think about this?
I don't think it's if you're literally using it to run in and run out, even if you're not an online person, I think it's okay. I have like a knee-jerk reaction to parking spaces like this, like, handicap spaces, absolutely appropriate. Those need to exist. But when I go to the market and it's like this spot is for expecting mothers. I'm like, get the hell out of here. You don't deserve your own parking spot.
Whoa.
Wow. Man, I was not expecting
Chris?
such a
Oh my
hot
goodness.
take so early in the morning. Jeez.
No, I have no sympathy if you're having a baby. Get away from me.
Pregnancy is difficult, Chris. It's
The
basically
planet
like-
is overcrowded. You're choosing to bring more screaming children into this horrible world. I'm not giving you a parking spot.
That's what happens when Peter leaves the podcast for one day. This happens.
Chris, for somebody who doesn't like getting bothered on the internet by people complaining at him, you were going to get ruined for this take.
By who? What? Mothers? Get away from me. I don't care.
Don't underestimate mommy bloggers. They are scary. And also
Get
pregnancy
away.
is difficult. A human body is a metal piece of work, and the fact that pregnancy is a thing at all is amazing. And so don't hate on expecting mothers.
For the record, let me say I don't take those spots. I just, when I see them, I grumble. I'm like, you don't deserve that. But I would never park in it like a jerk. But I feel like this, when you're literally parking to run in and get something and leave, I think it might be okay. But then again, you never know what could happen. Something could go wrong in the store. It could end up costing someone else their spot. So it's a slippery slope. But I also don't think it's
Let
like.
it be said here that Chris puts above expecting mothers people who are in a hurry to get their Chipotle order.
That's a useful thing. It's useful. They need to eat for fuel, and I don't know.
They're baking a baby inside their belly.
Yeah, but
Chris, if you're this upset over a pregnancy spot, I need to inform you about a spot at my local Barnes and Noble called Superhero Parking Only. That's only for war veterans and firefighters.
I mean, I guess that's all right. I don't know.
Or over mothers.
What is so special about mothers? I hate this
You know,
and where everyone's gonna be like, oh,
giving birth is
pregnant
the
women should
second
be
most
allowed
painful thing that a
to park
body can
close.
experience apart from being burned alive.
yeah, but you're like choosing to do that. You don't have to have the
Not choosing to
baby.
do it. You don't know what's going on in this current environment.
Okay, all right. I gotta.
HT, I need your take on the Chipotle lot so we can move on.
I don't care. I don't drive anymore because I'm in New York.
I think if they were bringing the food out to them, I would be annoyed by it, because there's been times where I've done a pickup order at like a sit-down restaurant to go, and they have spots that are designated to pick up the order, and they're taken by people who aren't getting pickup orders, and then they're like, "Where are you at?" And it's like, "I'm in the parking lot," and then they have to try and find me. I end up having to get out and get my food anyway.
All right. Well, this was all extremely unhelpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope you're happy, Jake.
Well, wait, what side are you on, Jacob? You have
I'm
to
on
tell
the
us.
side that to-go orders should be allowed to park in the mobile spots because you're in and out in less
see?
than 5 minutes.
See, so there, I agree with you, and also you agree with me that mothers don't deserve their own spots.
Don't put me in that camp. Mothers are nature's greatest creation.
Look, let me add the caveat here that I'm mostly kidding. I don't feel this strongly about mother parking spots. Please don't come after me, mothers. I'm mostly kidding.
I think we need to buy Chris a pregnancy belly so he knows what it feels like.
Look, I've had pretty much that for most of my adult life. I don't need a fake one.
All right, so let's try to move on from this blistering hot take. Brad, what have you been up to recently?
I forget what I've been up to just because I'm so floored by what. No. This weekend I got together with my friend Ben, who is opening up an escape room here in our town, and a few of us got together to plan the game flow for the first room that will be opened when the business itself opens in like a month and a half or so. Once I think that's when it is. But yeah, so it was really interesting just to kind of walk through the process of planning the steps for the puzzles and how people solve them and what they lead to and how obvious the clues need to be made. It's part of it comes from you can buy these kits that give you a very basic structure for what to do, but then most people when they get those kits they just take them and adapt them to their own narrative and puzzle solving process. So that's kind of what was going on here, and it was just it was a cool kind of inside out experience, and knowing what it's like to go through escape rooms and then figuring out how to make it challenging, but and also not hard enough so that people are discouraged by it. And it's just it was a very insightful process, and I had a lot of fun coming up with the various puzzles.
So how much trial and error is involved in something like that? Because it seems like there would be a lot. How do you, as a small group who's designing something, how do you sort of account for like what you anticipate the general population's reaction to be to something like that?
So at this point in the game, it's kind of a process of where the original idea starts off between like 2 or 3 people, the people who are my friend Ben and my friend Katie, who are the 2 main people creating the business. And then there's a couple other people involved who will be responsible for creating like the props and pieces that are involved in it. And so like when I had gotten there, I'm kind of like the next line of determining what works and what doesn't, because as soon as I arrived in the room, they were like, okay, like if we tell you this, like what would you do? Like how would you solve this? How would you approach it? To see if it's something that is difficult, something that makes sense, that kind of thing. And then after that, the next kind of line will be after the room is structured and the puzzles are all in place. We'll have like kind of like a beta testing thing where we bring in people who haven't been involved in the process at all, some of our closer friends, to go through the room and see how they do it, so that we can test and figure out, okay, what works, what doesn't, maybe what needs to be adjusted slightly, what's too hard, and that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to hear about the progress and how everybody reacts to it when this actually opens. So definitely keep us in the loop. Let's move on to what we've been reading. Jacob, I think you're the only one of us this week, or this past 2 weeks actually, who's been reading anything. What have you been reading lately?
Yeah, this is more of I found a cool thing I want to talk about briefly. Won't comment, but I found a copy of King-Size Kirby, which is a coffee table book that retails for $200, and I got it for $50 brand new at a used bookstore, still shrink wrapped. And I'm not too sure if I would pay $200 for it, but if you're a fan of Jack Kirby, the famous, iconic even Marvel and artist who drew early Captain America, drew Fantastic Four, drew pretty much all your favorite characters throughout the 60s. It is a massive book. It is one of the largest books I've ever seen in person. It weighs like a wheelbarrow full of bricks, and it is just it's pretty much a collection of his greatest hits, like issues from the 40s through the 70s of various things. I think they're all Marvel. It's giving you an excuse to like really take a close, massive look at his work. And if you happen to find one of these marked down, I'm not sure if $200 is worth it for very, very few books I'd pay $200 for. But this is a very cool thing. If you happen to find a copy for a good price, I recommend it just so you can really take in the art. But I really want to talk about the final issue of The Walking Dead. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but it was announced one day in advance that The Walking Dead was ending with issue 193. And I'm going to go into mild spoilers here, because I think I wanted to address this final issue in some way, which is that after massive events of issue 192, 193 jumps forward an unspecified number of decades. Like literally, it jumps to a point where it's between 20 and 30 years after 192 to a world where humanity has literally moved on from the zombie apocalypse. Zombies are still out there; they're still a thing, but humanity has adapted, and civilization has regrown in a way that has to, in a way, so that people are now living with the ongoing threat and just going about their daily lives in the same way that you go outside and there's a chance a car may hit you. Oh, there's now a chance there could be a zombie out there. That's kind of how people act about zombies in the final issue of The Walking Dead, and it's very much a one-off. Here's where everybody is. Here's where survivors are. And here's like the legacy of the people who died. But it's a really optimistic ending. It really suggests that, Robert Kirkman, the writer, believes that humanity can overcome, traumatizing events, and that people will ultimately care about people. And in the notes, in the final essay he writes when the issue is over, he notes about how he originally had an ending that was pessimistic, where everybody died, where he was going to have the zombies dominate the earth. And 10 years later, after he originally envisioned that ending, after he had a family and after he'd grown older and after he had, grown in his, maybe wiser, certainly richer with the Walking Dead TV show, he turned around and said that he didn't believe that anymore. He did not believe that the world was hopeless and futile. And he ends this massive, nearly 20-year-long comic book run on a genuinely upbeat, hopeful note. And I think it's worthy of praise that a series that was so often about shock and awe and killing people ultimately came down on the side of we're going to be okay, which was nothing I thought I needed from this comic series, but turns out I did.
It reminds me a lot of Spielberg and his thoughts on Close Encounters of the Third Kind and how they changed over the years.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's talk about what we've been watching. So, Jacob and HT, you guys watched Stuber. Tell us about this and whether you liked it. I don't think I've seen actual reactions from either of you, so I'm curious what you guys thought about this one.
Yeah, I saw it at South by Southwest for the first time a few months ago when they were showing an early cut. And other than the one thing I noticed in the theatrical cut is I believe there's a gag involving a penis that is much briefer in the theatrical version. But other than that, it's very much the same movie I saw. And it's very much a boilerplate buddy movie. I think the action is very bad. It's very badly shot action. But anytime it's Kumail Nanjiani and Dave Bautista in a car arguing, I'm very much on board. I think these two have such incredible chemistry, and they're so funny together. And it's very much a classic, buddy setup of they're both opposites. You have Kumail Nanjiani, who's the very modern, sensitive man, and you have Dave Bautista, who's the middle-aged, gruff, rough cop. And there's literally a fight scene where they're beating each other up, and Kumail Nanjiani screaming at him while hitting him over the head. It's okay for grown men to cry. And it's that kind of dynamic. And I really think Stuber is very funny. It's nothing earth-shaking. And if it was anybody else in these roles, I'd probably be writing it off. But man, I want Dave Bautista and Kumail Nanjiani to star in everything. But HC, I think you're a little more lukewarm than I am, right?
Yeah, I'm not as warm to Stuber as you are. I thought it was perfectly fine. I will agree that Dave Bautista and Kumail Nanjiani are the perfect unlikely pairing. They are so funny together. And yes, I would watch just 2 hours of them just driving and bantering and bickering the entire time. And I especially like that Kumail Nanjiani's character wasn't the comedy mule like I expected him to be, because he is the more experienced comedian, so I expected him to be kind of shouldering much of the comedy. But Dave Bautista really steps up to do a lot of slapstick, a lot of physical comedy, and in the end, he's kind of the wacky character versus Kumail Nanjiani's straight man. And I enjoyed that reversal a lot. I do think that the film is a little bit too by the numbers, and that the writing isn't as sharp and the jokes aren't as funny as these two deserve. And yeah, the lazily shot action scenes kind of grinded my gears, because there's one scene early on in the film where Dave Bautista is fighting Iko Uwais from the Raid films. And in any other film, this would be a really exciting fight, a great team up, because these are two renowned fighters in their real life before they and as well as actors. And yet this scene is shot so shoddily. There's a lot of rapid cutting. You can't see the action. And it's very much just like the Hollywood way of shooting action. That felt like a real shame and a loss to and a waste of this pairing together in terms of just the fight. So I would say it's a solid, it's a fine movie. It is a little bit too boilerplate for me, but I really do want to see more of Kumail Nanjiani and Dave Bautista together.
HT, you and Chris watched Crawl. Did you like Crawl more than you liked Stuber?
I did. I was actually surprised to find out how much I liked Crawl. Schlocky B-movie creature features are not really my sort of genre, and yet I found myself enjoying Crawl quite a bit, despite the really clunky dialogue and some of the questionable acting. But it's a tight 90-minute, I think it's only 87 minutes actually, a tight 87-minute thrill ride that really just grabs hold of you and keeps you on edge the entire time. I did kind of wish that it leaned a bit more into those schlocky B-horror roots, because the level of the production, it's a little bit too high quality to be just B-movie, despite the dialogue feeling like it came right out of a B-movie. So it kind of is it straddles a weird line there, but I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I think that Kaya Scodelario is a star. She's great in this movie.
Chris, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I love how short it is, because more often than not, movies are just too long these days, and this breezes by. There's like no fat on it, which I really appreciate. I do agree that I wish it leaned more into its B movie elements. I mean, I didn't want it to be like a winking like Sharknado movie. That's not what I'm looking for, but there are times where I felt like it takes itself just a little bit too seriously, and it's a weird juggling act because I want it to sort of take itself seriously because that's part of the fun, but it takes itself just too seriously. But beyond that, I had fun with it. It's quick. It's entertaining. It's a good summer movie. It's the ultimate summer movie where you're just looking for something to watch. You don't want to invest too heavily in it. You want to be entertained, and you want to get in and out. And so if you're looking for a movie about killer alligators, this movie delivers on that front. So it gives you what you want, basically.
Awesome. Chris, what else have you been watching?
Look, I gotta get this off my chest because I'm like filled with anxiety now. I was kidding about the mother thing. Please don't yell at me, internet. I was 99% kidding. There's like 1% of me that was serious. That said, what else did I watch? I watched the new Hellboy with David Harbour, from director Neil Marshall, who directed The Descent and some Game of Thrones episodes. And everyone, by now probably knows that this film did not do well, and it got savaged by critics. But I'm always willing to give things a second, a chance. Even if I hear they're terrible, I want to see for myself. And boy, I would actually say that the criticism against this movie undersold how bad it is. This is a laughably bad, poorly put together film. The special effects in this movie, whenever they rely on digital effects, they're so like clunky looking. They look almost as bad as the CGI The Rock in The Mummy Returns, which everyone knows is just atrocious looking. And David Harbour, man, he's trying really hard and he's doing the best he can with this material, but it's such a waste, and it just makes you all the more angry at how Guillermo del Toro pretty much got screwed over. They took this away from him to do whatever this is. Like for years he wanted to make that third film, and now it looks like he never will. And for what? So they could do whatever this is. It's a little disheartening.
Oh man, that's a bummer. So Jacob, I know you're a big fan of the Hellboy comics. I don't remember. Did you ever see this movie?
No, I'm waiting until I can pay as little as possible to see it on Amazon Prime or something, because once the word came out about how bad it was and how far it tonally off it is from the comics, I just gave up on it, because the whole point of rebooting it, I thought, was it has something that's closer to the comics, because I love the Del Toro movies, but they're Del Toro movies. They're not an adaptation of what's on the page. And this just seems like a meat-headed piece of crap. And even though Mike Mignola, the creator's name, is on it as a screenwriter, it is not what I want out of a Hellboy movie. So I'm going to wait until I can see it for $1 or less.
Brad, this seems like a movie that you actually would have sought out and tried to give a fair shake to. Did you ever see Hellboy, or did you skip this one?
No, I skipped it too. I almost tried to go see it, but it's I don't remember why, but I didn't have time to catch it when it first came out, and then because it bombed so poorly, it was out of theaters super quick, so I didn't get a chance to even see it like on a second run. I will give it a shot at some point, but I'm not rushing to see it either, just because of how bad the reviews were.
Gotcha. Chris, what else have you been watching?
The other thing I watched was Shazam, which is fun. I liked it. It's no Aquaman, let me put it that way, but I had fun with it. I think the villain, no offense to Mark Strong, who does the best he can, but I think the villain is really boring and weak and the least interesting part of the movie. But the Zachary Levi stuff where he's basically just riffing on Tom Hanks in Big, where he's a kid trapped in an adult's body, is very funny and very charming, and it's a movie that has its heart in the right place. I wish it were just a little bit better. I wish the script had gone through another rewrite to iron some things out. But beyond that, I had fun with this. I enjoyed it.
All right. Brad, what have you been watching?
I finally got around to seeing Annabelle Comes Home, and I really liked it. I think it's actually probably the best in the Annabelle franchise, and I actually enjoyed Annabelle Creation quite a bit. But this is just such a fun kind of grab bag of a lot of different spooky characters, and like Chris and Jacob have both said, it's like this haunted house full of spirits and demons and objects that are auditioning for the next Conjuring spinoff. And the Ferryman definitely is the best one in this movie. But it's fun. I like that it doesn't go for a lot of cheap jump scares. It goes for suspense and tension. McKenna Grace is fantastic in this movie. I'm really excited to see her in the new Ghostbusters movie after seeing how good she is in this. It's just full of a lot of really intense and just fun horror sequences, and it really does make me wish that Gary Doberman was more involved in the next Conjuring movie, because this is exactly what I want to see from that universe.
All right. You've also watched the first episode of something called Being Funny. I've never heard of this. What is this?
Yeah, so this is a new show that is on NBC, and it's basically, it seems like it's NBC's replacement for not having Last Comic Standing anymore. It's a competition show for comedy, where they're basically have a lot of different comedy acts performing and figuring out who is the best. So it has everything from stand-up to sketch comedy to like weird gimmicky things. Like there's this guy who like puts on a bunch of makeup and a shiny suit and pretends like he's this robot stand-up comedian. They have like the musical comedy acts, all this kind of stuff, and it's very much a safe network comedy competition show. Last Comic Standing at least had some edge to it. This is just very basic and boring. There was only one bit in the entire first episode that I really enjoyed, and it was a sketch comedy group that they did a sketch based around a kid show where one of the cast members is missing, and they bring in the sound guy to replace him because he knows exactly how the show goes. And during the kids' songs where they're like teaching them about stuff, he keeps inserting weird conspiracy theory things into songs. And that was a great bit. But otherwise, it's really stale stuff. And like, I'm surprised by how the judges react to some of this. Like, there's some things that are not good, and they're like, oh my gosh, this was so great. And the judges are Kenan Thompson, Jeff Foxworthy, and Chrissy Teigen. I don't know what the fuck Chrissy Teigen is doing here, because A, she doesn't know shit about comedy, and B, I just find her to be just an insufferable personality on shows like this. I know a lot of people like Chrissy Teigen. I understand that she does cool things on Twitter and has a big, celebrity personality. I don't care about her. I don't like her on shows like this. But it's weird because it feels like they're being very forgiving about this just because it's a network show, and it was very frustrating, and I don't know if I'm going to watch any more of it.
Wow. So a ringing endorsement then from Brad.
So. Bring back Last Comic Standing, NBC. Jeez.
What else have you been checking out?
And then I watched the first episode of CNN's new series, The Movies, which is basically just kind of like a docuseries that they have a lot of talking heads with filmmakers and critics and cinema experts talking about various eras and decades and motifs in films. The first one was focused on the 80s, so hits all of the signature footnotes of the movies that were good during that time. It's not really a series that is for people who are ingrained in cinema like us. It's a lot of surface level kind of observations, things that you would watch and be like, well, yeah, of course, yep, I know this, but it's still fairly enjoyable to watch, just because you get to see a lot of big filmmakers professing, what they love about these movies and that kind of thing, like Edgar Wright and Paul Thomas Anderson and Brad Bird. Tons of cool filmmakers are all over this series. It just started on CNN last week. I think the second episode just aired last night, which was based in the 90s. And then they have, I don't know how long it's running, but they're having a new episode every week, and it's around, I think it plays 2 hours, and it ends up being like around an hour and a half total of viewing time for it. So it's enjoyable, something fun to put on in the background. But like, if you're, it's more so for people who aren't as ingrained in movies like we are.
Yeah. HT, what have you been checking out recently?
I watched Stranger Things Season 3, and I know that you guys did a spoiler review of this, so I'll keep it brief. But I liked it. I liked it better than season 2. I thought it was much more better paced. They had more things for the characters to do, and I did have some issues with some of the storylines. I was not a fan of Hopper and Joyce's sort of subplot, because I had my own issues with Hopper's characterization in this season. I know that there's reasons for his being the way he is. He's dealing with years of trauma and alcoholism, and that's something that won't be dealt with overnight. But I felt like the way that this show approached it was something akin to romanticization of it, and I was not a big fan of that. But I really liked all the other storylines, and I did like the sort of the body horror approach to the monster this season, even if it is kind of a rehash of the last couple seasons. But it was fun.
Cool. What else?
I watched a film called Women at War. It's an Icelandic film that's like a comedy drama that will actually soon be getting an English language remake directed by and starring Jodie Foster. But this film is hilarious and dark, and a very sort of strange black comedy. It's about a woman who is a 50-year-old environmental activist who is a choir teacher by day and moonlights as an eco-terrorist by night, essentially. And as she starts to wage this one-woman war against the local aluminum industry in Iceland, she starts to gain the national attention, in which she's deemed a big organization, when it's in fact only this middle-aged woman who's acting out with a bow and arrow, essentially. And it's really funny, but it's definitely something that straddles this interesting tonal line between comedy and drama, and has some precious moments of grief as well, and emotion. So it's a great film, and I highly recommend it. It's streaming on Hulu now. So that's Woman at War. And I also saw The Farewell, which is a movie I dearly loved. Definitely is my favorite movie of the year now, because it shot its way to the top after I saw it. This is Lulu Wang's feature film based off her own experiences, in which her grandmother was diagnosed with cancer, and her family basically decided to lie about this diagnosis so that she would live the last few months of her life happily. And this is such a deeply affecting, surprisingly funny film that is very frank and candid, and felt so authentic, especially to my own experiences. I felt very seen by this film, even more so, I think, than any of the other Asian American films. And we've had quite a lot of them. So I'm feeling very blessed right now, especially with The Farewell coming in and having something that was just so poignant and so sharp and rich and funny, and dealing with some of the darker issues that we haven't seen in with Asian American portrayals on screen, such as the idea of saving face, and how that pertains to a lot of Eastern communities and East Asian cultures, and that idea that it's better to save face than to be truthful. I really like that it doesn't approach this concept with any sort of patronizing or condescending tone. It just does it so authentically, and so with such rich, deep understanding of everything. And the characters are also fleshed out and great, and it's beautifully made film. I highly recommend seeing it. It just opened in select theaters in New York and LA this week, and will be expanding next week. But The Farewell, one of the best movies of the year, and just a gorgeous, gorgeous film with a wonderful turn from Awkwafina.
So from a touching true life drama to a bizarre 80s fantasy, what was the last thing you watched?
I watched Dark Crystal, or The Dark Crystal, I'm sorry. So I'm going to be covering the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance panel at Comic-Con this coming week. So I wanted to prepare myself, and I had never seen The Dark Crystal. I have seen some of Jim Henson's work. I actually haven't seen a lot of the Muppets films, which is a big travesty, I know, but I really like Labyrinth, and I was always interested to see the Dark Crystal and see what that was like. And this is definitely a bizarre, strange, and interesting film. This is a film that has no human characters in it at all, which I think was really bold and audacious. And if it's set in this high fantasy world filled with all these different races. It's hard to explain in like a bite-sized summary, but it is such a lavish and ambitious film, and I applaud Jim Henson for doing this and kind of living his dream, because I know that he had this ambition to make a feature film that was solely of his puppet creations, and he does it so well with The Dark Crystal. I was also interested to see that there was a little bit of rotoscoping and stop motion animation used in this film as well. It wasn't solely puppetry, but it made it feel so much more tactile and alive, I guess I would say. So it's an interesting film. I wouldn't say I liked it. It was very dense, but I understand why it became such a cult sensation.
Awesome. All right. Well, HT, I think you have to go catch a flight, right?
Yes, I have to head out. I'm going on an airplane to the West Coast. So when I see you guys next, it'll be in sunny California.
All right. Well, travel safely, and tell people where they can find more of your work before you head out.
You can find me writing every day at /film.com, and I'm on Twitter at htranbui.
All right. Thanks, HT.
Thanks.
All right, Jacob, let's move on to you. What have you been checking out recently?
I realized my wife had never seen Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, so we watched that, and that movie is so freaking cool. I know it's gone through this roller coaster of reactions over the decades. So when it was first released, it was the attempt to turn the Halloween series into an anthology film series where each entry would be a different story set at Halloween, and it was a financial disaster. So the Halloween 4 brought back Michael Myers, but Halloween 3 remains this really strange anomaly, this one-off deeply bizarre horror film about Halloween masks and the company that makes them and their dark, sinister plans for the children of the world. And I don't want to say more than that, because if you haven't seen this yet, going in blind is a good way to go, because this movie goes places. So actually, I want to ask Chris, on the level of 1 to mass human sacrifices, how good is Halloween 3?
Is 1 the best? Wait, what are the codes?
1 to mass human sacrifice. That's the best one.
Mass human sacrifice is the best option.
Yes.
And I would put it there. Mass human sacrifice. Halloween 3 is a delight. I do think the pendulum has swung back around, and most people now agree that it's this sort of unheralded classic, but I love it, and I actually find myself rewatching it every Halloween season, along with the original.
Yeah, it's better than most of the actual Halloween sequels for sure. And I wish it was just called Season of the Witch. That way people wouldn't have association with Michael Myers and Halloween 3. You can just leave that baggage behind. But speaking of horror movies that I watched randomly with my wife, I watched The Dark, a 2005 movie that I had never heard of, and it's from John Fawcett, who made the werewolf movie Ginger Snaps a few years earlier, and this is his second and so far final feature film. I mean, Ginger Snaps is such a beloved, cult horror film, and this is a much more lavish film with Maria Bello and Sean Bean playing a estranged couple in Wales whose daughter dies at the site of a strange ritualistic massacre. And then another dead girl who's been dead for 60 years comes back, and it seems like they have swapped. Like, a dead girl came back because their daughter died, and ghostly shenanigans begin all around the Welsh countryside. And it's fine. It's streaming on Amazon Prime right now, and it's not bad at all. But I do wonder why John Fawcett never made another film after this. I mean, he made tons of TV. If you look at his IMDb page, there's so many TV movies and episodes of television. But I don't know why this put him in director's jail. Has anybody else seen The Dark?
I have not.
Clearly not. It seems long forgotten, but it's, like I said, Maria Bello, Sean Bean, beautiful Welsh countryside, and John Fawcett. It's a strange little footnote that doesn't deserve to be celebrated, but deserves to be remembered. So I'm putting it out here. And finally, if you go to Paramount Network on Sunday, you will find about 18 hours straight of Bar Rescue. And this is a reality show where John Taffer, the bar consultant extraordinaire, goes across America finding bars that need help and yelling at them until they get fixed. And apparently it's one of the very few shows Paramount Network has that does good ratings, because it will start playing early morning on Paramount Network on Sundays and then not stop until the new episode premieres later that evening. And I'm an unfortunate human where if I start watching a Bar Rescue episode, I have to watch the entire thing, and then I'll watch the next one and the next one. I have to be pulled away from the TV, because Bar Rescue is ideal trash television. And watching John Taffer, all he does is he walks into the bar, has all these problems, and yells at everybody and throws money at them until it's fixed, and then he leaves. And then like the little post-credit scene says whether they failed in the long run or not. And for all I know, John Taffer actually does a really good job in real life and knows what he's talking about. But for me, the appeal of Bar Rescue is John Taffer seeming to think volume can solve all problems, and I find it incredibly entertaining. Does anybody else here regularly fall down a Bar Rescue hole on Sunday mornings?
I can't say that I ever have, but anybody else?
Well,
I I had watched this with a friend of mine. I was just hanging out at his house. This was a while back, and nothing really was on, and he happened to toss it on, and we ended up sitting and watching like 4 or 5 episodes. And it really is something easy to get lost in. It's just fun to see what he can do with the bars and how he improves upon them. And it even like sometimes it gives cool ideas to where if you ever have your own like just small personal bar of like cool stuff you can do in your own house.
Yeah, and he has a new show I've not watched yet called Marriage Rescue, where he seems to apply the exact same tactics to people's relationships. And he seems woefully unqualified to be fixing people's marriages. That means I need to watch it to see how he solves broken marriages with volume.
All right, so that's Bar Rescue, and you can find it probably on the Paramount Network.
Constantly, all the time, all 10 seasons of it.
So for me, I watched A Matter of Life and Death, which is a Powell and Pressburger movie from 1946. Has anybody else seen this movie?
Dude,
No.
This is my Twitter avatar. It's one of my favorite films of all time.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Chris, have you seen this one?
Sorry, I was on mute and leaned back in my chair like a lazy bum, so I had to.
No problem.
No, I have not seen this.
Okay. So, man, this movie, I mean, I would highly, highly recommend this, and I suspect Jacob would too, talking about his ring endorsement from just a second ago. But this movie's on Criterion, the Criterion channel right now, which is how I saw it. It's streaming there. And God, this is such a gorgeous film. It is about this guy who is played by David Niven, who I only know from Casino Royale, not the Daniel Craig version, obviously, but like the 1960s non-canonical James Bond movie. I think that's the only thing I've ever seen David Niven in, and he's sort of like this bumbling. I don't even know how you would describe him in that movie. And that film, by the way, is like completely unwatchable. So I sort of wrote off David Niven as just like this goofball, but he is really, really good in this film. He plays a member of the Royal Air Force who is essentially shot down during World War II. And there is a cloud of English fog where he sort of gets lost in it, and it's almost like a Final Destination type of thing where like he was supposed to die, but death missed him because he got lost in this cloud, and he falls in love with this American radio operator who he's talking to as his plane is going down. And it's this woman who is played by, what is her name? Kim Hunter, and she's really great in this film too. I'd never even heard of her before. And so the two of them fall in love over the radio in this like last second, what he thinks is going to be the last moment of his life, basically. And then he realizes that he's survived, and he tracks this woman down, and they begin this sweeping romance. And then the afterlife, the conductor from the afterlife, comes to collect him because he realizes that he's made this mistake. But David Niven's character argues that because his situation has changed now and he's fallen in love with this woman, whereas he wouldn't have done that otherwise because of their mistake, that he is owed more time on Earth. And it's this really, really fascinating thing where it's like a high fantasy mixed with a war romance, where the fantasy elements come in, where this conductor comes down to Earth and has all these conversations with him. He stops time, and David Niven's character is like interacting with him, and everybody else around him is like completely frozen. There's this moment where two characters are playing ping pong on a ping pong table, and the ball freezes in the middle, and it seems like pretty impressive technology for 1946. But the other world is this really, really lush, beautiful looking black and white photography, and the architecture and everything is so impressive and amazing. So anyway, that's like the sort of gist of it, and it turns into like this legal drama where David Niven's character is trying to like make his case that he deserves this extra time because of their of Heaven's mistake, essentially. And Roger Livesey, I think is how you pronounce his name, it plays an earthbound doctor who becomes David Niven's character's like legal counsel, and he reminded me a lot of like a younger Jared Harris. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, man, this movie is really great. And if you're subscribing to the Criterion Channel right now, I would highly recommend checking this out. So Jacob, I want to turn this over to you for a second. This is one of your favorite movies. What do you love about this film?
What I love this movie is that it's this unabashedly romantic World War II story. First of all, I mean, the politics of it is literally, it was made to promote the idea of the Allies remaining friends post World War II and everybody remaining on the same page once Nazis were defeated. And they used that excuse as a launching point to tell this like high fantasy romance / legal drama. And as you alluded to, all the scenes set in the afterlife are in this like beautiful black and white, and all the scenes set on Earth are in this lush, gorgeous color. And there are scenes where they rotate between black and white, or utilize black and white versus color in ways that I think are as impressive as as Wizard of Oz. It is incredible cinematography, and it's like this. The romance is sweet. It's extremely funny. It has its heart in the right place at all times. It's a fascinating element of its time, and I don't even want to talk about the back half of the film because so many interesting twists and turns happen. But Powell and Pressburger, who made The Red Shoes and Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, just these amazing duo. Every film they made throughout their entire career is pretty much perfect. They've never made a bad movie. And this, when I first joined Slash Film in 2015, and I wrote my top 15 films of all time list, as every new member of the staff does, this was number 2, and it is still there. And I own a Criterion Blu-ray. I've seen it projected in 35 millimeter at a rep screening before. It is just the perfect. It is the reason I go to the movies. It is a genre-tinged romantic fantasy World War II document directed by people who know how to make movies better than 99.9% of every filmmaker who has ever lived. So, Matter of Life and Death is a masterpiece.
Yeah, you have to watch this movie. Do whatever it takes to track down a copy if you don't subscribe to the Criterion Channel. I would say it's worth subscribing just for this movie. Like, that's how good I found it. I was sort of bowled over by this film.
Well, the Criterion sale is going on right now, so you can get the Blu-ray for $20. I recommend it.
Oh, there you go. All right, so moving on, I also saw a movie called It's a Wonderful World, and this was from 1939 that starred James Stewart and Claudette Colbert, and I was instantly interested just because of the cast, but also because of the premise, which is Jimmy Stewart plays a private detective, and he is trying to solve a mystery, and he comes across a poetess, as they refer to her in this movie. I've never heard that word before. I thought it was just poet, regardless of gender, but a poetess played by Claudette Colbert, and it's sort of like a screwball comedy where the two of them are essentially bickering throughout the whole thing and trying to clear Jimmy Stewart's name and save this guy that he knows who's been framed for murder. And the way that I just described that, unfortunately, is way more entertaining than the actual movie is, and I was disappointed to find that out because it seems like such a cool concept and such a great cast to ultimately be such a sort of a bland movie. So I cannot recommend It's a Wonderful World. I saw it on Turner Classic Movies, so I DVR'd it off of there. But yeah, I mean, it's fine, but the relationship element there, which I think the movie really, really needs you to believe, and really leans heavily on, did not work for me. So I think a lot of the charm is sort of missing from the movie once you pull out that primary element. So that was a bit of a bummer. It's called It's a Wonderful World. If you want to check that out for yourselves, feel free to do that. Maybe you can seek it out somewhere. I also saw Tickled, which is a 2016 documentary from David Ferrier and Dylan Reeve, who are these guys from New Zealand who discovered the quote-unquote sport of competitive endurance tickling. Has anybody seen this? I've had this movie in my queue ever since this film played at Sundance, and I heard so much about it around that time, and I just sort of had it sitting in a queue and never got around to watching it until like 2 or 3 days ago. And God, this what a movie! So has anybody else seen this?
Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
crazy.
Yeah, it is it's a very surprising film.
Brad, have you seen this?
No, I haven't. That's one movie that's been sitting in my queue too. But I have heard how weird and disturbing and strange the turns are in this movie.
Yeah, so I actually am not even going to come close to giving away any of that. I'll just tell you guys what I knew about the film, which is basically what I just said. It's about these guys who discover competitive endurance tickling and try to make a documentary about it, and they are almost instantly thwarted in their attempt by this company that sort of runs the whole industry essentially, and it just, the mysteries start piling up on top of each other. The rabbit hole gets deeper and deeper, and these guys refuse to give up and just keep digging into what the hell is going on here. And man, this is just like one of the most fascinating documentaries that I've seen in a long, long time, and I knew it would be, and I was saving it for the perfect moment. And my wife the other day was like, let's watch some like, you know, interesting true crime kind of thing, and I was like, okay, I think this is the time. So we busted this out, and the movie is over, and then remembered that there was a sort of follow-up thing that was released right afterwards, and that's called The Tickle King, and that is on YouTube right now, so that's available for free. I should also say that Tickled is available on Hulu. That's how we watched that. So if you want to do this 1-2 punch, I would highly recommend doing that without reading anything about it, because as you guys have alluded to, the twists and turns that this movie takes are totally nuts, and it's a really, really fascinating movie that I don't even want to say what I think it's about, because I think that's going to give away too much. But that is called Tickled, and then The Tickle King is on YouTube right now for free. So definitely check those out if you're interested in like just cool mystery type of storytelling where you're going to spend a lot of time with your jaw on the floor and looking over at anybody you're watching the movie with saying, can you believe this is actually happening? So that's the Tickled and The Tickle King. And then finally, I just wanted to give a really quick shout out to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which is a show that I think is beloved on this podcast by pretty much everybody at Slash Film. And I had not given the show a shot yet, but this is also on Hulu. And my wife and I finally started watching this. And I think we're only, 10 episodes into the first season or something, but we're really liking it so far. And it's got a great cast of characters. It's got that same sort of, lovely heart that you would expect from something that executive producer Michael Schur would have created or co-created and been involved with. I think Dan Gore is the actual showrunner there. But yeah, the cast is great. The office dynamics are a lot of fun. The situations are amusing, and the humor and heart are really good throughout. So it's like the perfect sort of post Parks and Rec type of show. If like us, you were completely caught up with The Good Place and waiting for new episodes of that to air, I would highly recommend checking out Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I know you guys love the show. Any other words of praise about Brooklyn Nine-Nine from anyone?
I binged when I first started watching it. I binged all 5 seasons in about a week. And the next week I binged them again. That's the highest praise I can give any TV show.
Man, that is wild. Yeah, so my wife and I are doing the opposite. We realized that we have 120 episodes or something to watch. So we're just sort of taking it slow and luxuriating the fact that we have all of this content to that will be there for us when we need it. So I don't think we're going to be going through it at that rocket pacing, but I'm glad that it works well if you decide to do that anyway. All right, let's move on to what we've been eating. Brad, I think you're the only one who has been trying anything bizarre over the past week. What have you been eating recently?
So the county fair was in town last week, and there's always something new that to try at the county fair that's horrifyingly unhealthy.
That seems like ground zero for your podcast obsession. That's got to be a big deal for you.
For sure. So this year I tried, the new thing that they had was there was a food stand that had fried Pop-Tarts. There's always deep fried cookie dough and Oreos and all that stuff, and every now and then there's something new that people have decided, we can put this in a fryer. And so this time it was a Pop-Tart. It was very good. The deep frying it made it taste like a superior toaster strudel. It was very fruity and warm, and obviously the batter adds more to it. And they put powdered sugar on top of it as well. So another fun new thing to deep fry. And then I also found a new cereal. There's a new variant of Froot Loops out. That's birthday cake Froot Loops. They are not good. They don't taste anything like Froot Loops, and they taste only vaguely like birthday cake. It was almost closer to like just a plain cupcake kind of flavor with crunchy cereal texture. I didn't like it. I was pretty disappointed by them. I was hoping for at least some kind of like confetti cake kind of flavor in cereal, but it just didn't work out very well.
Who'd have thought that birthday cake Froot Loops would have been terrible?
I mean, there are some birthday cake flavor things that they capture the flavor pretty well, but I guess cereal's not a good format for it. I guess I don't know. And then Burger King has new crispy tacos, which seems like it goes against everything Burger King stands for. But this is something that I had been making the rounds at various like Burger Kings in just small variations. Like regionally, I think they were testing it out, and now it's like it's everywhere. They are $1 tacos, and that kind of tells you exactly what to expect from a taco that you get from Burger King. And let me tell you, the quality of the taco is very much in conjunction with the price of the taco. They are not very good. It feels like it was like smashed together after it was deep fried. There's barely any flavor. It's just they're not good. They're very disappointing. You'd be better served getting like a taco or like one of those wrapped crunchy like tacos like from the freezer section of your local grocery and warming up in the microwave than paying $1 for these crispy tacos from Burger King. They're bad.
Ooh, man. Well, hopefully people will avoid those because that sounds truly terrible. So did they use like ground up hamburger meat in the thing, or is it like a noticeably different type of
it's definitely taco meat, but it's taco meat that's probably akin to like the kind of taco meat you would get during school lunch.
Oh, jeez. All right. Well, the less said about that, the better. Let's move on to what we've been playing. And Jacob, I think you're the only one who's been playing some stuff. What have you been playing recently?
Yeah, I spent the weekend with my family, and we're all board game nuts. So I brought, I always bring an IKEA bag full of board games, my family, and present the buffet. We play, for hours on end. And I'll talk about two games. One that's an old favorite and one that was new to us. And the first one is Chinatown. And just the other day on our Slack channel, Chris was bemoaning complicated board games, and I was trying to defend games where you take a 60-page rule book to try to teach it in an hour to people. And Chinatown is the kind of game I think Chris would like because the rule book's like 4 pages long with very little text on each page. You can teach in 2 minutes, and there are almost no rules. It is set in the 60s, and you're all real estate magnates and business owners in 1960s Chinatown in San Francisco. So the goal of the game is to buy real estate, put businesses on the real estate, and make money. And that's literally the rules. And it's played over 6 rounds, and whoever has the most money at the end of the game wins. And this is Monopoly, but good. This is like, imagine if the core tenets of Monopoly, which is owning property, trading property, and making money, was actually worked into a game design that was fun and social and made people actually want to be at the table and engage with each other. Because Chinatown's rules are literally, you get new property, you get new business titles, and then you negotiate. You can literally trade money for anything. You can trade property rights for anything. You can trade businesses for anything. You can make any kind of deal you want. It's literally a game entirely of conversation. It's entirely looking at the board, seeing if you have something somebody else wants, and seeing what they'll trade for it or what they'll buy for it. And you reach a point where like somebody will say, I want this, and that person will say, okay, I'll give you this for that, but only if you get the third person to do this. You're making all these complex deals and trying to make sure everybody's happy. And it's such a great social game because at the end of the day, logic wins. Whoever has the most money, the flat out the most money wins the game. But you need to be able to wheel and deal. You need to be able to, play nice or play mean. You need to make wise choices. You need to, read a situation. It is like my wife, who comes from a real estate family, owns this game. She's great at it because she has a father who grew up teaching her how to, literally be a business person. Whereas me and my brother, who have no business ideals whatsoever, always lose, even though we have a great time playing, because we can never see the bigger picture. We can never plan ahead. But there are so few games that they encourage so much on a rule framework that is so simple. and it's made by Z-Man Games, and it's always in and out of print because it tends to sell out when it has a print run. But I watch Amazon, keep an eye on your local board game shop. Chinatown does come back, every few months they'll come back for a little while, then be gone for a bit. And it's straight up a game that nobody says no. When it hits the table, nobody is opposed to playing it in any of my board game groups, and I have several of them. So that's Chinatown. It is a remarkably good, remarkably simple game.
Very nice.
On the opposite end, I want to have a Black Hole Council, a game that is so complex that my family, who are all board game veterans, looked at me with hopeless eyes as I was explaining the rules. It's ultimately not as complex as other games, but it just has a lot of moving parts. And the theme is that you are the Black Hole Council. You are the Congress that runs the universe. And each round, you deal out random cards of planets to either tax them, conquer them, settle them, mine them, or toss into the black hole to make room for something else. And the idea is that you have a secret card that tells you which color planet you always want to mine, which color planet you always want to settle, which color planet you always want to toss in a black hole, and so on. And your goal is to always try to make sure your color planets, which are worth points, are on the right category. So that means that each round, all these cards are laid out. One player is a temporary leader, and only they are allowed to maneuver cards around to the various categories. So you flip over a 2-minute timer, and it becomes a game of negotiation, screaming, pleading, bribing, yelling, as everybody tries to make sure that their colored planets are in the right category. But you can't be too obvious, because if people can guess what your actual secret goals are, they get points for it. So you want to make sure you're getting what you want while making sure you're not being too obvious. And if the leader fails too much, then everybody gets penalized. So it's all a game about wheeling and dealing and negotiating, like Chinatown, but with a lot more rules. Once everybody reaches the halfway point of the game, they're pretty comfortable playing it. It's a very fun game. I would not recommend it for brand new players, even though it is simple by the sake of other things we played. But that's Black Hole Council. Actually, for the record, if you've played The Resistance, one of the best-selling board games of all time, it's Don Eskridge, the same designer. And if you've played Resistance a whole bunch, which is a game of bluffing and lying and secret teamwork, and you want something a bit more complex and ready to graduate above the Resistance, Black Hole Council is a really good step up, but it is not something I would toss on a first-time player.
All right, that sounds kind of personal, Jacob. The idea that if somebody discovers what planet you are trying to rep or whatever, and then everyone around you just teams up to dump all of your planets into a black hole. I mean, that is you're getting dunked on to the extreme there.
Oh yeah, that's why in early game I sacrificed some planets I liked so that people would think I didn't want that planet, so they would start putting it in places where I did want it. I still lost the game, but it actually made sure I came in second place.
All right, so before we completely wrap up, let's tell people where they can find more of our work online. Jacob, actually, let's start with you.
I'm on slashfilm.com every single day, and I'm on Twitter. I'm at Jacob S. Hall, and I'll be at Comic-Con starting Wednesday. So watch my Twitter feed and watch the site for all of our coverage.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have some podcasts from the ground in San Diego. I think Peter's gonna be putting those together. So stay tuned for more of that. In the meantime, Brad, where can we find more of your work online?
Always slashfilm.com as well. I won't be at Comic-Con this year for the first time in 9 years. Just because it's not a very movie-heavy year. My girlfriend's moving out to me in the next week and a half, and just a lot easier for me to stay and cover it remotely this year. But you can still find me on Twitter at Ethan_Anderton. Remotely, I'll be trying to focus on some of the other things that we don't have time to be in person for panels, like a lot of the collectible stuff from Hasbro, from Marvel Legends and Star Wars. So just keep an eye on Slashfilm for all that. And also my own podcast, Go Flix Yourself, which is available on iTunes and other podcasting platforms.
And Chris?
I also will not be at Comic-Con because I went last year and it made me sad. But I'm on slashfilm.com every day, and I'm not going to give out my Twitter handle in this episode because everyone will be mad at me for my parking lot.
Oh, man, that's probably a wise move. You can find me at slashfilm.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ben Pears, and you can find more about movies and all sorts of stuff at slashfilm.com. We're not linking anything in the show notes of this episode other than just links to where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. If you want to, and we encourage you to do this, please send your feedback, questions, comments, and or concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Also, if you do that, please make sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Don't forget also to rate and review the podcast on iTunes. That does help us a ton. Please do it if you haven't done it yet. I know I say this all the time, and you probably are just fast forwarding through this part. Please do it. It takes like 2 seconds. Tell your friends, spread the word about the show any way you can. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
We're not done.
Oh,
no.
God.
Ben,
All
we're
right.
not done.
Yeah.
Did you think you could escape?
Yeah.
Did you think you could escape, Ben?
I did, yes. And
Ben, what is the name of the
damn
book?
It. You
What is
know,
it- what
this
is
is
the name of the
thing.
book, Ben?
I cannot believe this because so people might have realized that Peter last week, after failing to answer Jacob's Sphinx-like question here, he actually wrote down the name and like took a picture of it with his ET doll or something that he keeps in his podcasting area. And I stupidly just leaned back in my chair, interlaced my fingers behind my head, and said, "Peter's got this. I don't have to worry about it." So I don't know. Brad or Chris, do you remember the name of this godforsaken book?
Something with effrontery in it. I remember.
the gargantuan book of insults,
Offense and Effrontery.
offense and effrontery by
Louis
something
A.
Sapien.
Sapien.
Yes.
Yeah.
You almost got it. The insult is singular. The gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery.
For
There's
God's
only one.
sake.
There's only one insult in the book.
And I've opened it to the bamboozlers section. That Chris, he always has a lot of trouble with those fluffy, thick hotel towels. He can hardly close his suitcase. That Brad, his wallet is always full of big bills, all unpaid.
Oh, that is the fucking truth.
Ben, he's making money selling I'm sorry, I'm gonna try this over because this one is complex, requires some layers. That Ben, he's making money bottling ashes from a crematorium and selling them to cannibals as instant people.
Whoa.
Wow. How is that in the same category as somebody who steals hotel towels?
Really, that's a smart move. Ben is like an entrepreneur. He's got this great side business where he's selling ashes.
Yeah, I've got
Yeah,
my
and-
own app and everything. It's people, but it's PLPLE or whatever the hell. Just take all the vowels out.
Well, when Chris slaps you on the back, it's only to make sure you'll swallow what he's told you.
Wait, I get two insults? What did I do?
Well, and Brad has more crust than
Smothers.
Brad has more crust than a pie factory.
Oh boy.
All right. Well, you
No,
gotta give.
no, Ben didn't get a second one. HC and Peter aren't here, so you all get second ones.
Okay.
At the dinner party, Ben's the guy who's sure to eat all the celery.
I do not understand that one.
Because you're poor.
Oh jeez.
I didn't realize that celery was like a food that was associated with not having any money, but okay.
Well, it's because, like, if you're at a party, no one eats the celery. So I think they're implying, like, you're going to dig in the trash and eat, like, trash
or
celery.
like the hors d'oeuvres that everybody leaves behind or something. It's just like
Yeah.
a stick of celery. Okay, yeah, I guess I need to go to more parties then or something because this is not my world. But
While we're here, I only recently realized that the Gargantuan Book of Insult, Offense, and Effrontery by Louis A. Sapien has an introduction. Shall I read from the introduction?
yes, for God's sake,
Yeah.
just go ahead. Yeah.
Introduction. Repartee has been defined as saying what you think after becoming a departee, saying as quick as a flash what you didn't say until next morning. Everyone, at one time or another, has had occasion to echo the familiar lamentation. Backward, turn backward, O time, in your flight. I've just thought of a wisecrack I needed last night.
Wow.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you the number of times that I've wished I've been able to come up with, on the fly, an insult about somebody stealing hotel towels.